Here's something about certain people that almost everyone gets wrong. When they're hurting the most, they go completely silent. No argument, no tears in front of you, no dramatic confrontation, just a stillness that settles over them like a door quietly closing, and from the outside, it looks like nothing happened. Like they're fine, like whatever you said or did simply didn't reach them. But here's the truth that psychology reveals, and it's one of the most misunderstood things about human behavior. That silence isn't peace. It isn't indifference. It isn't strength, in the way most people think. Silence isn't calm. It's containment. And once you understand what's actually being contained, and why, you'll never misread that quietness again. You've seen this person before. Maybe across a dinner table. Maybe in a relationship. Maybe in the mirror. Something happens. A harsh word. A betrayal. A moment where they needed someone. And that someone simply wasn't there. And instead of reacting, instead of raising their voice or breaking down, they just recede. They become polite, but distant. Present, but unreachable. They'll laugh at the right moments. They'll say they're fine, but something behind their eyes has gone somewhere you can't follow. People around them often say, "I never know what they're thinking." Or worse, they don't seem to care. But that's exactly backward. They care so much that the feeling has no safe exit. So it turns inward, and the quieter they become on the outside, the louder everything is within. From a psychological perspective, this isn't a personality quirk. It's a survival pattern, one that was written into the nervous system long before adulthood. Psychologists have noticed that people who withdraw into silence during emotional pain almost always learned this response early. In homes where feelings were dismissed, punished, or simply made to feel like an inconvenience, children adapted. They discovered that expressing pain didn't bring comfort. It brought consequences. So the emotion went underground. Attachment research describes this as a dismissive avoidant response. The nervous system, conditioned over years, begins to treat emotional exposure as danger. Not metaphorically, physiologically. Vulnerability activates the same threat response as physical harm, and this is the pattern reveal that explains everything. This is why they don't argue. Not because they don't care, but because conflict feels like emotional danger, not resolution. Their silence in the face of hurt isn't emotional absence. It's the mind protecting itself. The only way it learned how. They didn't stop caring. They stopped feeling safe to show it. So what does it feel like from inside that silence? Think of it this way. Imagine two people receive the same painful news. The first person cries immediately, calls a friend, talks it through. Within hours, the emotion has moved, expressed, witnessed, partially released. The second person nods, says they're okay, goes home, sits in a quiet room, and begins, alone, to carry the full weight of what just happened. That second person isn't stronger. They're not more composed. They're running a storm through a sealed room, every wall absorbing the impact, nothing escaping. Words form in their mind constantly, things they wish they could say, things they deserve to say, but somewhere between the thought and the voice, a door closes. A quiet internal question rises. Will this person actually hear me? Or will I just feel more exposed and still, just as alone? When the answer feels uncertain, silence wins every time. Here's what makes this even more profound, and what most people never realize. The ones who go quiet when they're hurt are often among the most emotionally perceptive people you will ever encounter. They notice everything. They read rooms. They sense shifts in tone. They feel the weight of what's left unsaid in a conversation. Their emotional world is extraordinarily rich. But that richness developed in a specific way, not through open expression, through careful observation. They learned to feel deeply and reveal selectively, to protect what was most real in them from a world that hadn't always been safe with it. The cost of that gift is this. They became deeply fluent in their own inner life and deeply guarded at the threshold of it. And so, the painful contradiction forms. The people who most need connection when they're hurting are the ones who withdraw from it most completely, not out of coldness, out of a wound so old. They've stopped remembering it's there. Long pause. But here is the paradox that cuts deepest. The silence, built entirely to protect something, often destroys the very thing it was meant to save. When someone goes quiet, the people around them don't see pain. They see distance. They interpret the withdrawal as anger, or manipulation, or simply not caring. The relationship begins to erode, not because love left, but because it became invisible. The quiet person is screaming in a frequency no one else can hear. And that might be the loneliest experience a human being can have, to feel everything completely and have it register as nothing. Over time, this pattern reshapes a person's entire relationship with themselves. Every time pain gets swallowed instead of spoken, a quiet belief gets reinforced. I handle things alone. That's just who I am. What began as a response becomes an identity, and that identity, however exhausting, starts to feel safer than the alternative, which is being seen, being vulnerable, and risking disappointment. Again, consider what that does to a person's sense of self-worth. When you never allow others to witness your pain, you also never give them the chance to prove they can hold it. You preemptively close the door on being supported, because some part of you has already decided what will happen. If you recognize yourself here, if you're the one who goes quiet when it gets to be too much, hear this, without judgment. That silence was never weakness. It was the most intelligent response you had, built from what life taught you at an age when you had no other tools. You learned to protect yourself, and that took a kind of quiet courage that deserves acknowledgement, not shame. But a protection built for the past doesn't always serve who you're becoming. The same walls that kept the pain in have also kept certain kinds of healing out. Because the people who have always held their pain alone aren't looking for someone to fix them. They're looking for someone who finally makes silence feel safe enough to break. If you've ever been the quiet one, the person who smiles and says, "I'm fine," while carrying something heavy alone, this video was made for you. Let me know in the comments. Even just the word, me. You'd be surprised how many people are reading those comments, feeling exactly the same way. And if this kind of deep psychological storytelling speaks to you, subscribe, because every week we explore the parts of human behavior that most people feel, but few ever have the words for. I'll see you in the next one.